So Jay, you want to start us off?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jay Lifson, Executive Director of the Lafayette Chamber, and we're happy to bring you this webinar today about reusable to-go containers and why this is going to be such an important topic to prepare for. I'll be back with some comments later, but first I would like to introduce our moderator, Sandra and Harris. Sandra has put together a lineup of presenters today that I think will be quite helpful in activating our restaurant community around zero waste initiatives. Sandra is a longtime Lafayette resident, Lafayette Chamber member, plastic pollution activist, and educator. Sandra's passion for reducing plastic pollution started in the early 2000s when she noticed there was a lot of waste being created at lunchtime in schools. So she started her company, Eco Lunchbox, in I think 2008, when her children were students at Lafayette Elementary School, to bring a first-to-market line of stainless steel, plastic-free lunchware that's now sold internationally. Sandra is also the author of the book, Say Goodbye to Plastic, which you should get, a survival guide for plastic-free living. So please join me in welcoming Sandra to kick off our educational webinar today. Sandra?
Thank you, Jay, for the introduction. And I'd like to warmly welcome our restaurant community as well as our presenters. Thank you very much for coming today. This is going to be an information-packed session focused on trashy takeout and reuse solutions for restaurants. This webinar is sponsored by the Lafayette Chamber of Commerce, and it's aimed at shining a light on the problem of too much waste created in takeout service, and most importantly, offering simple and cost-effective strategies for restaurants interested in reducing the amount of trash generated in takeout. I'm hoping that restaurant owners even can get excited about the possibility of saving some money, not just our planet, by buying fewer single-use containers destined for the landfill. While I continue my introductions, I'm going to share a few slides that sum up quantitatively the problem of trashy takeout. Awareness about plastic pollution has increased a lot over the last few years, but the problem has also gotten worse since the pandemic began. There are many factors, but one is the increasing popularity of takeout. We all love takeout and we don't want to stop ordering takeout, but for many of us, the trash that comes with the food is distressing. It's putting a burden on our waste systems and planet too. There's a cultural shift happening, a growing awareness of the impacts of wasteful habits. I'd encourage everyone today to think globally about the problem and act locally. Plastic pollution is a huge problem. The United Nations has adopted a resolution to end plastic pollution. Our state, California, and even in Washington, in DC, there's legislation happening to address plastic pollution. Many of us have heard about the gyres filled with plastic debris swirling in our ocean. Scientists estimate if we keep up the current rate of plastics use, there will be more plastic than fish in our oceans by 2050. Not as well understood is the connection between plastic and global warming. After all, plastic is a petroleum-based substance, and it has a significant negative impact on our CO2. There's a lot of talk locally in the San Francisco Bay Area, as well as nationally and internationally, about reducing waste from restaurant meals, as well as catered events, corporate campuses, and other commercial settings. But despite all of the talk, it's sometimes hard for restaurant owners to move from talk to walk. What is the best, easiest way to get started? Today, we'll hear from a reusables expert about what's happening in the Bay Area when it comes to trashy takeout. What's actually happening on the ground? Plus, a lot of restaurants aren't sure what's allowed when it comes to reusable takeout container sanitation practices. So they're reluctant to pack to-go orders in reusable containers. That's why we've prepared a simple one-pager with technical assistance from the Contra Costa County Health Department. We'll hear more today from the Health Department. Did you know that by accepting reusable containers and putting in place other waste reduction systems, restaurants can actually save thousands of dollars annually? Today, a presenter from Rethink Disposables, a nonprofit offering technical assistance to restaurants seeking to reduce their waste, will provide guidance and inspiration. We will also get an update on new state policies, AB 619 and AB 1276, aimed at reducing waste. Today, a representative from the Lafayette Environmental Task Force will give a brief update, and two waste experts from Recycle Smart and Republic Services will debunk some common myths about takeout containers that might look recyclable or compostable, but really aren't. So lots ahead, but let's start by hearing from Jay Lifson. Jay is the executive director of the Lafayette Chamber. In 2006, the Lafayette Chamber launched Lafayette's first Earth Day event. In 2008, the Chamber was one of the first membership organizations to implement a green business program in the Bay Area. The annual Art and Wine Festival, organized by the Chamber, draws 80,000 attendees and has a zero waste and green procedures in place to reduce their waste, including water bottle refilling stations. I'd like to thank Jay Lifson and the Chamber for their leadership in bringing green to Lafayette businesses over the years and hosting this webinar focusing on trashy takeout. Jay?
Yeah, thanks. So I'll be short. I think there's this cultural shift that's going on, and I think this is going to be one of the difficult changes. This is not going to be easy. There's all kinds of hurdles that we're going to have to figure out as we go through this particular procedure. But reusable containers, what a great way of having good stewardship in what we can do in our community. And the Lafayette community has done really a fantastic job in so many ways. We were one of the first cities to start doing the composting in our restaurants, and we were one of the first cities to ban plastic bags and styrofoam. But you know what? Even with the best intentions, some of our businesses are still using styrofoam. This is going to be tough. It's going to be tough to sort of figure out how to make this work and make it work efficiently. But this is something that's going to be part of our future. And AB 619. I mean, this was the start of this, and let's see where we can take this. I mean, the numbers are sort of staggering. I read somewhere that a single restaurant can produce 150,000 pounds of waste a year. That's outrageous. And that I think that accounts for like 45% of all the waste in landfills is food waste. So let's see what we can do about learning more about this and starting it here and being leaders. Thanks.
Thanks, Jay. So let me introduce Eva Holman, who I think will provide Bay Area perspective on what's already happening. It's not out of reach to get started. Eva has worked with the city of San Francisco to pass policies banning straws, styrofoam, plastic water bottles, and disposable plastic foodware. She is an expert on plastic reduction policy and campaign development and implementation, and is also working with other Bay Area cities on reusable foodware policies for restaurants and reusable foodware in schools. Thank you for joining us, Eva.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here, really excited to see that Lafayette's moving in this direction. And I know, it has been for a while. This isn't a new story. It's a continuing story, and it's really exciting to be part of the process. I wanted to do sort of the news in reuse. There's a lot going on. I'm going to share my screen and show you a little presentation. But just first of all, I just walked in the door from the Marin Civic Center, where they just passed probably the largest reuse policy that we've seen. All of Marin County has a model policy in place. It's reusable foodware for on-site and a 25-cent charge for cups. So this is a really quickly growing movement, not just in policy, but also in campaigns and in just working with restaurants and offering them reusable solutions, which is growing day by day. So what's going on with reuse in 2022? We're coming out of COVID, slowly clawing our way out of COVID. The numbers don't look that way right now, but it feels like the world's opening up a little bit. I just went out to a beautiful outdoor lunch on all reusables, and it's just, you're feeling the delight of enjoying that elevated experience again. I wanted to just briefly go through, these are kind of the hot points of where reuse is really happening right now. And I just told you about Marin, so that's the big news in Marin. There's been other movement in Marin. Marin is also using some reusable foodware for to-go in Mill Valley, and they're expanding that as well. And that is just restaurants who are interested in using reusables or seeking out reusable companies that can help them with that work. San Francisco, we just finished a Reuse Wins in San Francisco marketing campaign where Grace and Rethink Disposable and the Department of the Environment partnered on technical assistance with restaurants who wanted to switch to reusables to save money. And I'm sure Grace can talk a little more about what happened there, but it was a huge success. And the Department of the Environment is continuing to work with Rethink Disposable and Environment Now to support restaurants in making the transition. San Mateo County has a model foodware policy that includes a ban on PFAS, fiber-based compostables, and accessories upon request. And that's going through their cities rapidly. And they've also decided in 2 cities so far to tack on a reusable foodware for on-site dining. So Redwood City is working on it right now, and Pacifica has already passed it, but they also have a really strong technical assistance program through Rethink Disposable. A lot of what I talk about is what Grace does, because I'm completely in awe of the work that they do. Sonoma County does not have any reusable to-go programs yet, but they do have a great policy that's going through Sonoma as well that bans plastics. And then 2 cities, Sebastopol and Santa Rosa, have decided to amend with reusables for on-site dining as well. So as cities adopt that policy, they're deciding whether to do the reusables for on-site or not. LA just passed, county and city of LA just passed a major piece of, passed or are working on a major foodware policy, which would include reusables for on-site dining, a ban of plastics, toxic chemicals, styrofoam. It's kind of the whole kit and caboodle. And that's a pretty big win, because you don't really think of LA as a really progressive area, or I don't anyway. Maybe others who've had more time there, like Grace, have different opinions about that. But when you think about a lot of disposable to-go containers when you're in LA, it's a pretty fast casual space. Berkeley, Arcata, Watsonville, and Palm Springs have already passed reuse policies of some sort or another, and some of them also have cup or container charges. And then schools, just briefly, we're working with schools in Berkeley, San Francisco, Marin, San Mateo County. All of those districts are interested in moving towards back to the old school reusable foodware and reusable trays within their cafeteria systems. So that's another really fun and rewarding way to get into reuse, is to start with the schools and the kids who are actually most impacted by the chemicals that come on disposable foodware, plastics, and compostables. San Ramon I put in here because Carrie just launched a really incredible campaign that's not a policy in San Ramon that talks about reusable foodware and how it can help restaurants by reducing the money that they spend on disposables and waste management. Oops. does not want to move. There we go. So 2 common ways to champion reuse. I'm going to try to keep this really brief because you have so many incredible experts here, but obviously a reuse campaign, like something that's easy to do without legislation, without developing a policy, is you can work with organizations like Plastic-Free Restaurants and Rethink Disposable, come up with a campaign and work directly with restaurants. You can get city and county assistance and funding, partner with reusable foodware companies. I mentioned Dispatch because that's what's happening in San Francisco. Waste management companies love to jump in and help on waste reduction strategies. And then San Ramon, San Francisco, and San Mateo County are all already working on these kind of campaigns that we can look at for ideas. Reuse policy, oftentimes you build a coalition, which can then engage and collaborate with restaurants, small business owners, and community members. Build your policy language, start building support. And really, it's a long process because you really need to, it's, you know, the responsibility of this coalition to engage with all stakeholders. And that goes from the restaurants to the customers, to the waste management companies, to, you know, everyone needs to be part of that process. And that's already happened in Berkeley, Marin, Santa Rosa, Sebastopol, Pacifica, Fairfax, and San Anselmo. So this is not a new, a lot of people are working on reuse policies as a foodware waste reduction. This was actually a slide I borrowed from the Marin County Council of Chambers that I presented to recently before we passed this Marin policy, which was a really fun way to engage with all the different cities in Marin. And it really breaks down some of the cost savings of switching from a disposable to a reusable, because when you do a foodware policy, oftentimes you have to switch to a fiber-based, compostable, PFAS-free, BPI certified foodware, which can be a little bit more expensive than a single-use, or sometimes a lot more expensive than a single-use plastic. And so obviously switching to one reusable in place of 1,000 compostable plates makes a lot of sense when it comes down to dollars and cents. So this is the campaign that San Mateo County is doing, Foodware Aware. Now, San Mateo County's model ordinance does not include mandatory reuse for on-site dining, but all of their marketing materials and all of their outreach is really centered on reusables as the way to get businesses to save money. And Grace, once again, will be talking about some of the work she's doing there. We're doing a lot of the outreach in San Mateo County, but the county's really pushing for resources for food facilities and restaurants. And they even, this screenshot here is of a great database that they've developed and put on their website where food businesses can actually go and look at what different types of reusable foodware they can use in place of single-use disposables. And along those lines, we have Trash Free San Ramon, and they are doing a very similar campaign where they're asking restaurants to create a Trash Free San Ramon by choosing reusable. So this is not a policy, it's a campaign, and the city's working directly with food businesses to help them remove single-use disposables from on-site dining and switch to reusables. I wanted to quickly mention that I'm talking a lot about policies for on-site dining. There has not been a policy as of yet for to-go. No one has developed or implemented a policy that mandates reusables for to-go. So this is where we have coalitions. I will be providing this presentation to anyone who wants to see it. There's a link to each of these coalitions. This is only a few. Los Angeles, Marin, San Francisco, San Mateo County, all have reuse coalitions that are a mixture of government, sustainability professionals, activists, environmentalists, a lot of students. There's a lot of student work in these coalitions. Actually, students developed in most of these websites. And then resources, I just thought that maybe, you can contact these friendly and helpful organizations if you want to do any of this stuff. There's people out there that are just ready and willing and excited to help, whether it be a campaign, a policy, schools, or building a coalition. And I've mentioned some of the real great people I've had the opportunity to work for and with here, but they're all great assets to have in your pocket. And of course, there's me at the end. If ever anyone wants to move forward with any of the things I talked about, I just want you to know that it's not new, but sometimes it's scary, but together we can do anything.
Thank you, Eva. It's exciting to be inspired by what's actually happening right now. And there are lots of boots on the ground, and people are having success in reducing restaurant trash already. and Lafayette can really follow in the footsteps as well as be a leader in our county. I'd like to introduce Joshua Slattengren of the Contra Costa County Health Department. Thank you for joining us, Joshua. Joshua has been working with the Contra Costa Environmental Health Department for almost 20 years. And during that time, pretty much extensively in the food program. He started his job there shortly after college, after graduating from UC Davis, where he studied environmental biology and management. Thanks for joining us, Joshua. We look forward to hearing more about how restaurants that would like to accept BYO containers can do that while maintaining high sanitation protocols.
No problem. So thank you for having me. So yeah, as you said, I was asked to join this webinar to briefly talk about AB 619 as per the health department standpoints. So we do have a lot of restaurants who do ask, my office, what do we need to do to go ahead and follow or comply with this assembly bill? So I just have one slide for you guys, but it hopefully should be sweet and to the point on just 3 bullet points that the restaurants need to kind of follow. Let me go ahead and share a screen real quick. All right, is screen being shared? Yes, I do, okay. So for the Assembly Bill 619, there's just 3 things that the restaurants really need to do to go ahead and follow to make it work for their restaurant. So 3 requirements are: the consumer-owned containers must be isolated from the serving surface, or the surface must be sanitized after each filling. Next, the facility is required to prepare, maintain, and adhere written procedures that address cross-contamination to prevent any potential cross-contamination or bacteria. And also they need to make sure that proper hand washing is being played out. So all this means is real simple. Just use good common sense when you're following AB 619. So if I am an employee and I'm taking a container from a customer, if I am going to put it down on a preparation surface, just make sure I'm cleaning and sanitizing that preparation surface after I pick it back up. And obviously, if I'm taking a container from a customer, as I fill up their food, I give it back to them, I'm going to go ahead and wash my hands. And then the law requires, once again, some written procedures, and the procedures just need to be very simple, to the point, showing that you are just trying to protect, public health. Yes, we will clean and sanitize surfaces if that utensil touches a prep surface. And yes, we're going to go ahead and wash our hands after handling any customer's containers. And so AB 619, may not work for all restaurants, but it will work pretty well for a number of restaurants. And so some people ask me, are we able to deny any containers? And yes, you can. If a restaurant comes in, or a customer comes in and brings an old styrofoam stained container and you don't feel comfortable using it, you could tell them that, as per state law, as per county health, you can deny that container. So yeah, it's some restaurants do use their own containers for portion control. And then this option for the reusable containers may not work. But again, this is a good option now for restaurants to do to try to reduce some of the waste. But let me go ahead and get my screen back. Stop share.
So I just had a quick follow-up. Whenever I can, I like to bring in my own containers and have restaurants put the food, directly in the container. I show up, hi, I'd like to order, whatever it is. Here are my containers. And, in Alameda County, in San Francisco, I find that it's easier than in Contra Costa County. What I've encountered here with restaurants is a lot of nervousness that the restaurant, might not do it right and might get in trouble. They're like, yeah, I totally get it, but I'm just worried, that I'm going to be out of compliance. So for people who are a little unsure, Joshua, restaurant managers and owners, what would be their first step to getting clarification on any questions that they might have?
So first and foremost, yeah, if any of the operators or restaurants do have questions, they could always contact my office, contact their inspector directly. But again, it is in state law, and every district and the county has a certain inspector there. So every restaurant knows their health inspector. They know how to get a hold of them, give them a call, ask them about it. And then we can kind of walk you through the process. And it's a very simple process to do. Obviously, we're trying to reduce waste. And even to follow the procedures, it's not that difficult to do. We just need to use, once again, good common sense. When do you need to wash your hands? When do you need to sanitize certain surfaces? So it's a pretty easy process to follow. But again, it's something new that people aren't ready for yet, but taking that first step is kind of difficult. So
sounds great. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Joshua. So we're going to move on, and Grace Lee of Rethink Disposables is going to be our next presenter. Grace joined the Rethink Disposables team in 2018. She has worked with hundreds of businesses across the United States to support their transition to reusable foodware, including schools, catering businesses, institutions like Google, and small to large restaurants. Grace has over 20 years of experience in public engagement, partnership building, and program implementation for projects centered around waste reduction, water quality improvement, and behavior change. Thank you so much, Grace, for joining us. And I really look forward to hearing about some of the success stories you've been a part of when it comes to reducing trashy restaurant practices.
Thanks, Sandra. It's really an honor to be here with everyone. I'm really excited to talk to everyone today about Rethink Disposable. So let me share my screen. All right, can everyone see this okay? Okay, oops, moved too quickly. All right, well, Rethink Disposable has been around for over a decade. So we've been kind of going through a lot of trial and error on how to perfect our program and are continuing to do so. We started way back in 2010 after we did a municipal litter characterization study. So that just basically means that we went around to several cities in the Bay Area, picked up a bunch of trash, and looked at what the trash was comprised of. We know that 85% of marine debris comes from inland sources. So what we wanted to do was characterize what was actually ending up in the ocean to see if there was a way we could stop that trash from getting into the ocean in the first place. So we found that almost 70% of the litter that we picked up was food and beverage packaging. So hence Rethink Disposable was born out of the idea that if we reduce that trash at the source, that would be a significant reduction or elimination of land-based debris that flows into the ocean. We're hyper-focused these days on weaving our efforts with small to medium-sized local businesses that are owned or managed by folks who identify as women, or Indigenous, Black, people of color, or a part of the LGBTQ community. I will go into a little bit of that and how that plays out with our technical assistance and financial incentives. But what we do is that we work directly with these businesses to help them convert their non-reusables to reusables for on-site dining. We offer free technical assistance, and this is critical for removing any barriers to behavior change. Change is hard. So we go in there, we become basically the business's personal assistant for however long it takes to make this transition happen. We also are supported by many municipal grants and foundation grants or contracts, and that supplies funding that it's kind of like a pass-through. So we provide that funding directly to restaurants. This is a way that cities are coupling ordinances with this type of technical assistance. So this is a way that cities are investing back into their restaurant community by having this chunk of change that we then can allocate towards restaurants. And so with free technical assistance, and then also what we call prebates, of about $300 to $500 per restaurant, we're able to really get in there and work with restaurants to transition them over to reusable foodware. And we found that about $500, $600 sometimes is really quite sufficient to get a restaurant to go 100% reusable for their dining service. So that's been kind of a really nice discovery on our part. So what we do, diving a little bit more into that, again, we provide technical assistance as that, we know our busy restaurant friends, they don't have a lot of time to do, apply for grants or look for resources to help, shop through, flip through a catalog even if they're really motivated to go reusable. So we are there to help them through the entire process. We also do the product research for what reusables would match with their restaurant. And we help them with an implementation plan or staff training, signage. We will procure the reusables for the restaurant and actually make deliveries. This is Jamie Griffiths in Half Moon Bay. And this is Ariel Ford in Palo Alto. So we try to do as much as we can for the restaurant so they really don't have to lift a finger to make this transition. Currently, we're recruiting and converting all types of restaurants. So you can see there's a diversity of restaurants here in this slide that can benefit from reusables. And right now you can find us in Alameda and San Mateo counties, Palo Alto, San Francisco, Los Angeles, the city of Seaside in partnership with another nonprofit called Environmental Innovations. We are submitting a proposal to Lafayette, so hopefully we'll be coming to your community. Okay, and this is kind of the special part of the program, is that for some of our restaurants, about 50% throughout the, more than a decade, we've done data dives into what are the environmental and economic benefits to switching to reusables from disposable packaging for dine-in. And, a lot of folks feel as if reusables are a hardship for restaurants. And what we've found, and we've been so pleasantly surprised, what we've found is that restaurants that switch to reusables actually see savings in ranges between $3,000 to $22,000 every year. And they're able to eliminate 115,000 disposable packaging items, again, every year, which equates to about 1,300 pounds of waste. And we see that of the packaging items that we target for reduction, typically we see a 60% reduction across all of those items. And these are average kind of annual results over the almost 300 restaurants and 13 institutions that we've worked with. Actually, the institution numbers are just way beyond these numbers. So this is more for the small and medium-sized businesses. But what this means is that as long as the restaurant is implementing or using reusables, mostly for their dine-in, they will see these savings and reduction in disposable packaging items every year. And after that, I talked about the prebates earlier, after the $300 to $500 worth of investment in reusable foodware, after about 4 months, that's pretty much been the case across all of our businesses, they start to see that payback. So that's after 4 months, they will start earning those savings back. But with a lot of our contracts, we are purchasing the foodware for the restaurants. There's no out-of-pocket cost. So really the payback is pretty immediate. I wanted to just take a look at one case study. Actually, I have two here, but Sandra, I'm not sure if I have time for two.
Okay.
Okay, great. So there's a bakery in the city of Alameda. And we switched, just made a couple simple switches. You know, they were a bakery and they had a few tables that you could sit and enjoy their pastries. And they were using disposable plates and cups, and we just switched them over to real ceramic plate in a nice glass. They installed a dishwasher, which Beth, the owner, said that improved labor efficiency. They actually didn't need to hire additional staff, which is a common concern, is that staff would now have to, you know, their time would be spent on washing dishes and not anything else. But they didn't need to hire additional staff to process the dishes. Their water bill did increase by $30 a month, but the cost of the dishwasher installation and rental was offset by savings earned from switching to reusables. So this is a nice little testament to how reusables can, you know, are beneficial in many ways. Another case study I wanted to point out that looks at labor costs. Hang 10 boiler, again, this is from the city of Alameda. Let me move over this talking box here. And I highlight, you don't have to read this whole case study, but we switched over. I mean, it was a full service restaurant, but you sat down, you ordered your food and everything came in a disposable package. We switched them over 100% to reusables. And it took some time because at first when we walked through the door, Maya, the owner, was very, very overwhelmed. I mean, they had a lot of packaging that they would have to switch over. So at first they were a hard no to switching to reusables, but we convinced them to try at least one thing. So just start with one reusable, see how that feels, you know, in terms of dishwashing and handling and things like that. And we came back a few weeks later and Maya wanted to do all of her foodware and switch it over. So we did that. We invested $2,000 into her business to buy plastic tumblers and real bowls, and they also hired a part-time dishwasher to manage all the dishes. So that was about $9,000 to pay the individual. And so you could see here that the entire annual cost, and that covered additional water and labor impacts, was $11,000. But then when we calculated the savings for each individual packaging item that we switched over to reusable, they still earned an ongoing annual net cost savings of almost $4,000, and were able to prevent more than 300,000 pieces of disposable packaging items from ending up in the landfill or in our environment. And that was a 73% reduction in foodware at their business. And here, this is my last slide, but here you could see our little constellation of happy customers. So Rethink Disposable has happy customers as well as restaurants. But you can see, I mean, there's so many different types of restaurants that can benefit from reuse, and you can see with all the smiling faces, really it elevates dining experience, like Eva said, and it really saves, you know, thousands of dollars at times. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Grace. That was amazing. Yeah, I've been in touch with City Hall and also with the Lafayette Environmental Task Force discussing the work of Rethink Disposables, and the nonprofit is going to be putting together a proposal for the city of Lafayette, and I'm hopeful that we can find some budget so that restaurants here in the city of Lafayette can get this kind of technical assistance and support to make the transition. It's like hitting the easy button if we can get Rethink Disposables on board here in the city. And I would encourage any restaurants who think that they might be interested in Rethink Disposable services to email the chamber and let us know, let your city council know, let the environmental task force know. So our next speaker is Nancy Hugh with the Lafayette Environmental Task Force. Nancy is currently the chair of the task force. It's a city commission designed to help create and implement policies that reduce Lafayette's environmental impact. Nancy has lived in Lafayette with her husband and 2 children for the last 10 years. As a dentist for the VA, she looks at many climate and plastic pollution issues from a health perspective. Nancy's going to share a little bit about what's going on right here in Lafayette when it comes to these issues. Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you. And thank you everybody for having me. It's an honor to be here. So I've been on the Lafayette Environmental Task Force for about 5 years now. I'm the current chair. I'm going to talk a bit about what the ETF is, its role in city government, as well as discuss the AB 1276 law that's coming into effect soon. So the ETF was formed about 2008 and is a volunteer city commission, much like many other city commissions. And we are focused on advising the city council on policies that we think will help reduce our carbon emissions or reduce pollution and waste within our community. Some of the policies which the ETF has worked on before I joined include the prohibition or the banning of single-use plastic carryout bags, as well as polystyrene, also known as styrofoam, foodware containers. And these took place around 2013, 2014. And if you go to Love Lafayette's webpage, you can search for their online municipal code, and you'll find under Section 5 details about how Lafayette has restricted plastic bags as well as polystyrene use. So Lafayette has so many great restaurants, and we want to see our local businesses thrive. But with the growing plastic pollution crisis, as Sandra so very well stated, and the visible rise in trash when we're ordering takeout, the ETF has had a growing interest in this over the last couple of years, and we want to find ways to help our environment by reducing waste, empowering our citizens, and supporting our local businesses in transitioning to greener practices. So I'm going to next talk about the AB 1276 law. And it's a new law which was signed in by Governor Newsom in October of 2021. Some might know it as Skip the Stuff. It says that effective June 1st of this year, food businesses should only provide single-use food accessories upon request. So these are things like straws and stirrers, utensils, chopsticks, forks, spoons, knives, forks, condiment cups, packets, ketchup, mustard, all these things, splash sticks, cocktail sticks, all that other stuff that you get with your food. It excludes correctional facilities, healthcare facilities, residential facilities, and school cafeterias. So that means everybody else, which is like our food businesses and our restaurants, such as you. So the whole point of this law is to reduce waste, but also save businesses money. So it might take a little time to retrain the staff to not automatically include these items and train them to ask customers if they want them. But that simple retraining will hopefully be well worth the trouble because you'll be saving money in the end. So I'm part of a group called the Buy Nothing Project, where members can give away items or ask for items. And I've blurred out names so members or businesses won't get thrown under the bus. But check this out. This person said, "We love sushi, and even though we ask for no utensils and soy sauce, it still comes in every order. Bonus offering of Parmesan cheese packets, likely close to 40 packets of chopsticks." And then another person going, "Flash give, we have a bag full of takeout utensils, even after repeated requests not to give us any. Could anyone use these for any reason?" And then another one, "Despite always saying no for takeout utensils, we still have a ton. Does anyone know where we can donate them? Does anybody want them?" So people don't want these. Granted, they're probably like 4 to 13 cents, which is not a whole lot per packet. But when you add it all up, it's money literally going down the drain. Now, for some ideas of what food spaces could look like, especially if you're eating on site for some of these, accessories. This is at a cafeteria that I'd gone to, where most of the condiments came in bulk containers. Like you can see the Parmesan cheese, Italian seasoning, chili oil. There's pumping stations for the ketchup and the mustard and hot sauce. And on the right, you can see what self-serve silverware, utensils can look like. And the compostable utensils that they have there is birchware, which is the kind of fiber that will actually break down in our composting facilities. This is an example of a time when I took out Takeout from Bistro Burger, which unfortunately they're closed now. But I was able to get burgers, fries, and nuggets in our own containers. And this is also in downtown Johnny's Donuts. We were celebrating some staff at work. And so I had asked them beforehand, is it okay if I bring my container? And oh, sure. So I brought them aluminum trays, and I was able to order 24 donuts, and they packed it in. It was great. And I plan on washing this and reusing it for future. And it was great. It saved a cardboard box. This was a restaurant in Berkeley, which let me take home most of my takeout order in my containers. It was a partial success, but had I known that they were going to pack a sauce container for my seafood pancake, I would have refused it because we never used the sauce. And this is from a sushi restaurant in Palo Alto. 8 of these containers actually reused from what I personally brought when I ordered the takeout. And so I'm just circling all the areas that were reused, which is actually pretty cool. 8 containers. But had I known that they were going to individually package my ginger, wasabi, soy sauce packets, chopsticks, napkins, I would have refused it all because I was taking the takeout home to eat with my family. So anyway, let's skip the stuff. Let's make it default to not include these accessories. Ask your customers if they want them. Chances are they don't. If you have your business website, include a spot that asks customers if they want to opt in for these accessories. Many of the, sorry, where did I put it? There it is. Oh, are they showing up? There it is. Okay. Yeah, many of these third-party businesses, they have a spot where they ask customers if they want to opt in for the accessories, or actually they have it if it's opt out. And so even though there are a lot of customers that opt out, you'll see a lot of customers still automatically get these things. So right now, I think there are some campaigns to try to switch it so that's more opt in for it rather than opt out. That way it's not automatically included and that you have to actually ask for it. So anyway, thank you for your time. If anybody wants to get in touch with me after the webinar, these are my social media handles and my email. I like to post a lot our family's journey on this, zero waste adventure. So thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Nancy. I loved all the photos. Keeping it real, right? I mean, it's happened to all of us. But this is a team sport. It's we and it's the restaurant providers, and the more we can all elevate our zero waste game on both sides, the better it will be for our planet, and the less impact we'll have in terms of waste. Which brings us to our last speakers, who I'm going to introduce now. Ashley Louisiana of Recycle Smart and Kimberly Lamb of Republic Services are joining us now to talk about the impact that plastic and other takeout trash has on our local waste stream. Ashley is a program manager with Recycle Smart, a Lafayette resident and a new member of wait for it, the Lafayette Environmental Task Force. Ashley develops, implements, and manages waste prevention and recycling programs. She works closely with Kimberly and her team at Republic Services. Kimberly is a municipal manager with Republic Services and has been with the company for 9 years. She has a team of dedicated recycling coordinators who work closely with businesses and the community to increase diversion through recycling and composting programs. Kimberly is also involved with the local nonprofit Sustainable Contra Costa. Thank you both for presenting today.
Thank you, Sandra. Happy to be here. Good afternoon. So Kimberly and I are going to provide a brief overview of the services provided in Lafayette with a specific focus on our commercial sector and food packaging. So Recycle Smart is a joint powers authority with 6 member cities and towns, including the 3 La Miranda cities, Walnut Creek, Danville, and some unincorporated areas of the county. We hold the 10-year franchise agreement with Republic Services, and there may be some decisions on extension soon, so that may be longer, for all collection of commercial and residential recycling, organics, and landfill services. So when making decisions about what we're going to dispose of on a daily basis, there is no such thing as a way. All of the blue cart materials go to Mount Diablo Resource Recovery in Pittsburgh for processing. Clean recyclables are sorted, baled, and sold to market. All of the green bin materials, or what Recycle Smart and the state are now calling organics, for commercial accounts, including restaurants, includes all food scraps and food soiled paper. Green cart materials are processed at East Bay Mud and anaerobically digested in-vessel contained digesters and turned into clean energy that both helps power the East Bay Mud facility, and it's sold to the Port of Oakland. And here you will see a breakdown of our commercial franchise diversion, currently at 42%. And diversion in this case means diverted from landfill. And as businesses are reopening after the pandemic, waste is increasing. So we have an opportunity right now to reopen with better sorting practices. And in comparison, our residential franchise diversion rate in Lafayette is at 68%. So our commercial sector has a lot of opportunity for improvement. And we're not alone in that. That's a statewide trend for various reasons. It is a lot more difficult to manage waste at a commercial setting compared to a single family home. So Kimberly is now going to talk about packaging and what goes where.
Hello, everyone. So we are kind of still in the pandemic, but it definitely changed the waste stream that we saw when we were picking up from both the residential sector and the commercial sector. There was a big swing in the tonnage of waste from residential. Everyone was staying home and doing school from home and getting takeout deliveries. So we saw a lot more waste and materials from the residential side. But now that businesses are starting to reopen and businesses and shopping plazas are almost back to normal, we're definitely seeing that shift back to the commercial side. So we get a lot of questions from not just businesses, but also residents, everyone who is a little bit confused, and for good reason, because there's so many different materials that things are made out of these days, and a lot of different labels that we see. And so it can be confusing. In terms of the organics, so the Green Cart program, both for commercial and residential, we accept food scraps. That's any kind of food, meat, bones, dairy, processed foods, unprocessed. Both of those programs, whether it's going to our compost facility or our commercial digestion program that Ashley mentioned, can handle all types of food scraps. The food soiled paper can get a little confusing because there's different types. Sometimes they're coated, meaning there's a layer. Usually it's shiny on one side. So think Starbucks hot cups. They look like regular paper cups, but they're lined with plastic. And so we cannot take that in composting. We want purely uncoated food soiled paper like the ones you see here, the napkins, paper towels, things like that. For recycling, this gets tricky with food takeout containers because often these items are a bit dirty or oily or still have food and liquid in them. And it's really important that recyclables are empty, clean, and dry because we don't want it to contaminate the rest of the clean recycling in the containers that we're picking up. So imagine if we have clean office paper and clean cardboard that then gets a can of soda dumped on it because it's put in the same bin. So we've been doing a lot of education with Recycle Smart. They've been doing ads and mailers and really trying to get the word out. Empty, clean, and dry is really important. We get questions, especially as we approach summer, about how well things need to be washed for recyclables. We don't want you to spend a lot of water and effort, scrubbing down these materials. If you just drain them, scrape as much as you can out, it's usually good enough. If it's something that's just so sticky and, if it's got melted cheese all over it, then it's probably best to just put that in the landfill. And that finally leaves us with the landfill container. That's for everything else. As you can see from these images, things that are dirty and greasy, that still have liquids or food in them, styrofoam as well. We do still see that, even though in many cities it's banned. And the really confusing items are the compostable plastics. A lot of brands are now putting labels all over everything. It's biodegradable, it's nature-based, it's, all natural ingredients, but unfortunately our compost facility cannot take any compostable plastic containers like these, like the green striped cups or the forks made out of potatoes. It just doesn't break down fully and fast enough in our processing. And it's also just very confusing for our drivers and for residents and businesses and restaurants. So we just want to avoid those completely. And here's an example. The fork and spoon went through the compost facility and it didn't break down. You could probably use it again. We just want to avoid these altogether. And it is also confusing because some of the compostable plastics look like regular plastic. They're completely clear. And so that is also not recyclable because it's not made from a traditional plastic blend and unfortunately would have to go into the landfill. And so I think all the other presenters did a great job of talking about why we don't even want to get to this part. We want to reuse as a first priority, reduce and reuse before we even look at these types of materials. And we talked a little bit about this. Usually if it's shiny, we don't want it. It would have to go in the landfill.
I wanted to bring up SB 1383. It's a massive piece of policy that was put into place recently, January 1st, and we could have a whole workshop on SB 1383 alone. But what I really wanted to focus out of this law is the education and proper sorting that's now required throughout the state. This includes proper management of all material streams, 3-stream indoor containers. The statewide colors are now black or gray for landfill, blue for recycling, and green for organics, along with accurate signage and annual employee education. And then local jurisdictions are now also required to monitor contamination, and Recycle Smart and Republic have already started to do that earlier this year. And we've been doing route audits for both residential and commercial routes. We'll have to touch each route once throughout every year. And we're providing direct outreach and feedback back to those customers. So hopefully with some consistency throughout the state, we will see improvements in our sorting behaviors.
And we are here to help. I know it can sound overwhelming, but we do have a team of dedicated recycling coordinators who do site visits and meet with businesses. We can do staff trainings and we'll help monitor contamination if that's an issue as well. We have posters, stickers. We can help restaurants get started with a starter set if you need a green container for the kitchen to collect food scraps. And with Recycle Smart, we can also help refer businesses to local food recovery organizations. That's a big part of SB 1383 is making sure that edible food goes where it needs to go.
Thank you.
And, yep, feel free to contact Ashley or myself. We're happy to help.
Thank you, Kimberly and Ashley. Every time I listen to one of your presentations, I pick up something new, and I consider myself a waste expert. This is tricky stuff and it can change. And so I encourage our restaurant community to ask for help if they're not sure. No shame in that. So this reaches the end of our program. I'd like to say thank you to everyone who has attended and been here with us and taken the time out of their day to learn how we can reduce the trash associated with takeout, and to think about how we can think globally and act locally. And I'd really like to thank our fabulous presenters for inspiring us with their expertise and with the possibility that we can change business as usual when it comes to restaurant service. So I really hope this presentation is of service to all of you in attendance, and I invite you to let your restaurant colleagues know that we're going to be putting a recording of today's presentation on the Lafayette Chamber of Commerce YouTube channel. And if you have any questions, please email the Lafayette Chamber of Commerce. And we also have the one-pager with the frequently asked questions regarding BYO containers available for restaurants. Until next time, goodbye for now. This is the end. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.